Pleasure.
So Uzi's lecture now is Hamas, Indoctrination, and Dehumanizing the Jew. Uzi is the director of the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle East and African Studies at Tel Aviv University. He's a leading scholar on the Iran, Iraq, the Middle East, doing all kinds of projects all over the world on these issues. So really, thanks for being here, and we're in for a treat to have you here, so thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, of course, and I have to say that's much better a room than the previous one. So it's great.
Special for you.
Yeah. Okay, so what we are going to do here is two things. First of all, actually to shed some light about Hamas conduct in Gaza, ideologically speaking, with regard to the indoctrination educational system stuff in the recent 20 years. We have to take note that Hamas actually was dealing with that in kind of a very independent way, because Israel was out of Gaza since 2005. And the second thing is just to get an idea of how all these things were poured kind of into the 7th of October atrocities, what was the impact, and how we should read that, not only in the, let us say, Israel-Hamas layer, but also when it comes to the broader Middle East. Just to bring sort of, this is the Middle East, of course. You are familiar with that. Okay. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, just to get kind of an idea about what we are talking about in terms of geography, in terms of proportion. Of course, when we are dealing with the Middle East today, it would be basically two main axes, one of which is being run by Iran. I just take the liberty to say that on Thursday, I am going to talk about Iran, the octopus, so to speak, and the way actually the Iranian camp is being organized these days in the Middle East. And there is another axis where we can find Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Egypt, and others. So basically, we'll leave it to the geopolitical panorama to be dealt with on Thursday. But Hamas is basically found here. This is kind of very, very small slice of territory, less than 400 kilometers square. And this is what we get. Two territorial slices, which are meant by Palestinians to a large extent. In Gaza, we don't have any Jewish settlement. As I said before, Israel evacuated itself from Gaza 20 years ago. And it happens to be a grave mistake. Of course, in retrospective, we are dealing with that way because the whole southern gate, Gaza's actually access to the world, was not blocked. Actually, the whole industry of tunnels and stuff was to be nurtured 20 years in kind of a very systematic way through Egypt, and Egypt turned a blind eye to that in spite of having actually peace agreement with Israel. In any case, just to give you some introductory remarks, this is of course the West Bank. In Arabic, الضفة الغربية, and this is basically, of course, the West Bank of River Jordan. East Bank is Kingdom of Jordan. Basically, when we do talk about the West Bank, nowadays actually the ruler sits here. The capital city of this region is Ramallah, and this is Palestinian Authority, which is governed mainly, or the core is activists of the Fatah movement. This brings us back to the 50s and the 60s. basically, I would just say, for the sake of our discussion, that most of, let us say, the West Bank rulers are Palestinians who are inspired originally by secular notions. So if I'm talking about Fatah, if I'm talking even about some other organizations like Naif Hawatman, George Habash, and Ahmad Jibril, I guess you are familiar with the name. All of them were to actually were to come to existence on the 50s, 60s. Basically, this was kind of a challenge to the then Arab states. As you remember, Nasser was actually basically the hero. He tried to move ahead with the Arab nationalism. Palestine, for him, was basically the engine of Arab nationalism. After the 1967 defeat of the Arab armies, Palestinians were to become a sort of potential saviors of Palestine, Fida'iyun, and then we had a totally different opera after 1967. But in broad strokes, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that when we deal with the West Bank, it is still governed by people of Fatah, even if here in the north, Jews actually are depicting this as Judea and Samaria. This is Judea, basically. This is Samaria. I can just point to places like Jenin, Nablus, Tulkarem, Qalqilia, who are basically independent, much away from the control of Ramallah. And here we have a cocktail of many, many radical groups who are trying to challenge Israel in kind of a third intifada phenomenon or stuff. But you have to just get the idea that way. This is Israel, of course. In it you can find either Judea and Samaria, West Bank, it doesn't matter. This is part and parcel of the whole thing. Gaza is here, bordering Egypt and Israel. And once we have here sort of so-called, I would say, secular Palestinians, let's just move, for the sake of our discussion, to Hamas. Hamas is kind of a Palestinian group or movement that happens to translate Palestinian or explain Palestinian nationalism through Islamic symbols. So this is, let's put it that way, religious dimension of Palestinian nationalism. It's not to say that Palestinian nationalism is not to be found in Hamas ideology, definitely yes, but it has to be measured and understood in line with religious lens. Of course, this is Gaza, this is Rafah. Just take a note about that. Half of Rafah is Palestinian, Gazan, half of Rafah is Egyptian, and this is actually the story where we're in. Okay? So, it would be definitely accurate to say that between Hamas and Fatah, they are at loggerheads, to say the least, but there is a huge or a bunch of conflicts that basically are originated from the different fact that these guys do understand reality by using religious motives, and the others are having kind of a different way to look at things. This is not to say that Hamas actually is, based on anti-Israelism and Fatah or PLO is doing the opposite. But there are differences, in the Middle East. Every state and society can be polarized in line with religious and secularism as a general term. And of course, when we come to analyze that, we will find different attitudes as to how to just deal with problems and how to just deal with things. Okay, what can we tell ourselves about Hamas? What is Hamas? Hamas is the acronyms of حركة المقاومة الإسلامية. So in Arabic it would be Hamas. Hamas is a word, by the way, that literally can be translated as enthusiasm. The acronyms has a meaning, it's a word in Arabic. But it is very, very important to talk about Harakat al-Muqawama because this is kind of a notion that's very, very typical for that kind of organizations. By the way, Hezbollah, Shi'i though, so is it,
Connected to the camera.
I have to hold it? Sorry. That way? Okay.
Hamas is an emotional term.
Sorry?
Hamas in Arabic is an emotional term.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I mean, the translation would be Hamas, يعني enthusiasm. Yeah, yes, of course. But the words actually stand for. Is that okay? Yeah, the word stand for حركة المقاومة الإسلامية, and Hezbollah, Shi'i though, is also a muqawama organization. Muqawama is resistance, of course, and this has become something which is part and parcel of their ideology and the way they should steadfast or struggle Israel. Let me just give you some, let's talk about where Hamas was originated from. This is Muslim Brothers. Yes. Egypt, of course, 1928, Hassan al-Banna. I don't know if you are familiar with that, so you would like me to just skip that, and you are familiar with all that? No? Okay. So this is so sorry, I mean, I have to, you know. This is the emblem of Muslim Brothers. Let us just translate it into English just to save some time. Allah is our objective. The messenger is our leader. The Quran is our constitution. Jihad is our war. And death for the sake of Allah is our highest hope. This is basically Muslim Brothers. Of course, when they came to exist in 1928, there was a different Middle East. Egypt was ruled by the British, and of course that was a very, very dramatic cry, a challenge to the whole course or path the Middle East was to take from then on. Basically, these guys are from the beginning actually thought that something should be replaced dramatically in the Arab world or the Muslim world. They were very, very, I would say, upset with the performance of many, many Arab leaders that were taken, you know, let me put it in kind of a very blunt way, as Trojan horses of the West, okay? Since the West, from the beginning, was the other or the enemy in their eyes, the whole outlook was to be interpreted or take shape and that kind of a thing. This is it. A year after the establishment of Israel, 1948, Muslim Brothers actually have exported many branches to the region. The first of which, or the second of which, sorry, was that was exported to Gaza. Gaza was part of the Egyptian rule there. Okay? Part and parcel of Egypt. All these Muslim societies, a branch of Muslim societies that were exported by Muslim Brothers to Gaza, were to become 40 years after that, in 1988, what we call Hamas. Okay? Hamas was there in another name until 1988. What his activists were focusing on was da'wah, which is a civilian effort by which to turn by which to turn young people in Gaza into devoted Muslims. The notion of Hamas then was that you have to work bottom up. Bottom up. If you would like to arrange for a real revolution in the Muslim world, you shouldn't actually deal only with the usurpers, with the incumbent rulers. What you have to do is just to do the bottom up. And basically, this is something that happened there. Da'wah was the main thing. With the passage of time, what Hamas has started to bring in is what we call the military arm. The military arm of Hamas is called, this is Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigade, and there was kind of a combination between civilian efforts and military efforts by which to deal with that way. Let me just show you the, this is the emblem of Hamas. You see what I said before about Muslim Brothers is also a slogan that is being actually internalized by Hamas. Look at that. The mosque is in the heart of the emblem, as if to say that I can talk about Palestine, but don't forget, Palestine is a term to be translated only in accordance with Islamic understandings, ordinances, or whatever. Second thing is, of course, the green color, which is very, very typical for Islamic radicalism all over the place. This is Palestine. Many Israelis would say that this is Israel. Exactly. But, for Hamas, this is Palestine. من النهر إلى البحر. From the river to the sea. When ignorant people actually are shouting all over the world, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, they do echo Hamas charter. When you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you say, in other words, there's no way actually a Zionist or a Jewish Israel could exist. And this is something that we have to bear in mind. For us, this is just part of it. Actually, the other Sunni group, which began as a clandestine organization, was Islamic Jihad. This is Fathi Shkaki, physician from Rafah, that was to expel from Egypt, after 1981, the assassination of the then President Anwar Sadat. He came actually to Gaza back with another Gazan, Abdurrahman al-Awda from Jabaliya refugee camp, and together they created or established in 1981 the Islamic Jihad, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, of course, because we have in Egypt also an Islamic Jihad. This is PIJ. And of course, you see the main motives are there also. But these guys actually were highly inspired by what happened in the Middle East these years, especially the 1979 actually Islamic Revolution in Iran, that was to suggest or offer that you can build up a state that is based solely, the whole prerogative is going to be found in the hands of Shi'i, or let us say religious clerics. This is what they call in Persian Jamhuriya Islami, Islamic Republic, a state which is run solely by those clerics. And the whole notion was to fascinate many, many Islamists, some of them actually in the Islamic Jihad and others, who came to what I would say, create kind of an idea about themselves and established in Gaza Islamic Jihad, a group that from the beginning was basically identifies itself with the annihilation of Israel, Kifah Musallah, armed struggle, and all that stuff. So that was the let us say, the panoramic view you can get from Gaza in the 80s. Let me just remind you that in 1987 there was an intifada against Israel. This intifada was to strengthen, to bolster Hamas' position in the Palestinian fold. And from then on, actually, what we got there is Hamas very, very dominant in Gaza. This is, of course, Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigade. This is the military arms of Hamas. Let me just, it's very, very sporadic what I'm trying to do here. Just some introductory remarks by which to have to get the idea. This is not my interpretation. I'm just quoting from the chart of Hamas, okay? Israel will arise and continue to exist until Islam abolishes it. As it abolished what went before. This is Hassan al-Banna, the great leader of Muslim Brothers, actually came. History is very important here. This is why we do argue that history, culture, language, memorization is the most important thing, is most important stuff when we come to the Middle East. You know, many deal with geopolitics, and we hold nothing against that. We are doing geopolitics too. How big your army is, what you are coming up when it comes with advanced technology, it's very important. But if you tend to neglect the stuff that says loud and clear in the Middle East, culture matters. Culture matters. If you neglect that kind of dimension, you're going to lag behind. You're going to find yourself actually with misunderstanding day after day, and this is exactly what happened to Israel in 7th of October. What we do see here, this is kind of a publication by Hamas, which adheres to some general principles and policies. I'm trying actually to stick to stuff that we have found there, okay? These are documents that are not fabricated. This is actually was written by Hamas. Let's just make sure we understand what is written here. Well, the jihad for the sake of liberating Palestine is a personal duty. This is Article 15 of the chart. What does that mean? Personal duty. There are duties, different duties actually. Some of them are actually related to the public, some of them to the individual space. They are individualizing jihad for Palestine. The day enemies steal part, okay, I won't get to that, but this is very, very important here. ولا بد من ربط قضية فلسطين في أذهان الأجيال المسلمة على أنها قضية دينية. What does that mean? Palestine is a religious stuff, religious problem. Don't talk to me about Palestine while bringing in some universal notions or some secular notions or some Western notions. This is it. Therefore, what must be done is to instill in the mind of all the Muslims, generations, that the problem of Palestine is religious. And on that basis, it must be dealt with. Now, Hamas controlled Gaza for 20 years. Try to imagine, Israel was not there. Hamas was actually free and independent to foster an educational system in line or in accordance with his beliefs. Try to imagine what the whole generation in Gaza was to be educated by, and then you understand how 7th October atrocities were there. And we've been there. We've been inquiring into this educational system. It's not only that a translation of Mein Kampf into Arabic, of course, was part and parcel of the curricula, but the whole notion of who are the Jews, how you are going to dehumanize them, to treat them as subculture, and then on top of that, to bring in many, many Islamic interpretations, of course twisted, of why actually these guys should be slaughtered. And this is what I would like to say. I mean, this can be achieved now. We can actually provide that. This is what actually Hamas was using, of course, and it is very important, the religiosity of the conflict. And remember, when I am having a conflict with you against a regional background, we turn the conflict into an eternal one. Because if I would actually have a territorial, something that is based on materialism with you, we can come to a compromise. I don't know what the compromise is, but there is a room for a compromise. When it's either or, it's either me or you, this is the result of a religious thinking, of course, religious extremism. I won't say, I won't hold things against Islam, because I can show you that when it comes to United Arab Emirates and normalization, we have the Abrahamic city in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if you have managed to see that, when a synagogue and a church and a mosque are actually being established side by side, and this is kind of an indication that there could be a different narrative when it comes to that. But Hamas would take it to totally another place. Now, Jews and Zionists, Hamas would try actually to, I would say, deceive his audience, especially Westerners, saying that he has nothing against Jews, but only against Zionists. And he goes to explain the Jews for ages were subjects of the Islamic Empire, which is true. I myself a descendant of Iraqi Jews. My ancestors actually, I guess, left Zion 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, after the demolition of the Temple House. And until 1951, they stayed in Iraq. They, of course, actually were left with nothing and were forced to leave Iraq. But until 1951, I can assure you, they were 100% Iraqis. Jews, but Iraqis. So people are being stripped of their set of identities. But here is the thing, what Hamas is doing by focusing on Zionism is to further elaborate on the notion that Israel that came to exist in 1948 is nothing more than an avant-garde or kind of an advanced base or camp of Western colonialism or imperialism. Basically, this is the disease itself, actually. This is also what Iran would argue. Big Satan, small Satan, all that stuff that we're going to talk about that on Thursday. But now let's just make sure we understand that. I just want to give you some hadith, some traditions or kind of stories actually being told either by the Prophet or by her companions, Sahaba, which would tell you, and this is, by the way, the stuff which is being learned in the educational textbooks in Gaza for 20 years. There is a hadith which is named Hadith al-Hajar wal-Shajar. What does that mean? It means that when we come to that hadith, if I would have to just the rocks and trees, this is actually what you can find. People, Jews, are people who are basically cowards. This is actually what Islam generally says. They would stand or hide behind the tree or the rock or whatever, And this is what the rocks and trees, while seeing Muslim, would say, O Muslims, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him. It's very, very simplistic, but it's very right to the point. Jews should be, haunted, and they are part of the thing that we have to just understand. The dividing lines between Zionists and Jews in the educational system of Hamas for more than 20 years were blurred. There is a division between Jews and Zionists, I can tell you. I mean, in Israel, there are people who are, define themselves as Zionists, other Orthodox Jews. I mean, we have our problems of our own, actually, and that can be found in abundance, but this is not the thing that we do talk about. But here, Hamas, in order to make sure that when it comes to the generation that he is, that grows up in Gaza in the recent years, this was the case. We are going actually to understand that Jews and Zionists are the same things. At the heart of this lies armed resistance, which is regarded as strategic choice. As this, I told you that, and we have to just make sure we have that too. This is 7th of October actually thing. It is called Tufan al-Aqsa in Arabic. This is how the Hamas is naming the 7th of October atrocities, Al-Aqsa flood. Okay, you can say that Ma'arakat Tufan al-Aqsa. And once again, this is kind of a very methodological thing to be noted when it comes to the history of the Middle East, and even when we are dealing with present time. When it comes to the bad guys, and I take the liberty to just name them that way, these are people that could be definitely seen where we stand. You know, what does that mean? 2024. They do behave like regular human beings when it comes to the day-to-day activities. But those guys are having kind of I would say, a device in their back of mind which definitely has a link with kind of a different time zone. Different, I would say, verses by which to be inspired to do things. So here is what we think. If we haven't got a clue about this other time zone from which they do glean actually inspiration, when do haven't got a clue about those verses, could be Quran, Hadith, or any other source, where they do glean sort of an inspiration, we are basically a little children that were thrown into a very complicated forest. So this is why actually this is our cry. If we would like actually to play the game in the Middle East, we have to teach Israel how to become, I would say, a defending democracy in the sense of dealing with a more creative manner stuff that Israel is being confronted with in the recent years, because these guys are very sophisticated. They are very cunning and very shrewd. Students of Iran, and Iranians, in my opinion, Persians seem to be the most clever, actually human being stuff when it comes to the 21st century. But this is what we are trying. Which flood actually they do talk about? Any idea? Noah, definitely. Noah is an Islamic prophet. And the whole session of the flood is there. They do also talk about the story of the spies in Israel, but this is something that they are using back and forth to bolster their warriors while they are doing this assault. There is, listen to that. This is something that I can't elaborate too much on that, but this is the stuff actually that was found in the pockets of Nukhba fighters when they actually were doing their horrendous attack on the Gaza envelope kibbutzim and cities. These are ayahs or hadith, verses from Quran or tradition. Basically, you see, this is ayah, hadith, hadith, hadith. This is, ayah is a verse. Verse. This was on there, and this is something that, you know, I mean, we are living in a post-truth era. You know that? Everybody could come up with what he wants and what she wants, and everybody is selling his own narrative. So, first of which is, what counts is who you are listening to. I don't want to persuade you, but what I'm coming up with is something which is very, very, how should I put it, very deep, entrenched in the Gaza thing that happened in the 7th of October. This is ayah, this is hadith tradition, and this is kalima. You see that? This is, I would say, motivational phrases also. What they are doing there is just to make sure that those guys are coming up with what we need. Listen to that. In a motivational phrases that Al-Qassam brigades, when I'm saying Nukhba is, you know, in Arabic it is elite forces, commando forces of Azad-Din Al-Qassam brigades to fight and sacrifice tadhiyya. There are also statements intended to increase motivation for killing and slaughtering, for example. Okay? We are people who enjoy drinking blood. And we have learned that no blood is better than that of the Jews. And therefore, we have come to drink the Jewish blood. Of course, Hamas was denying when he saw and confronted the backlash. He tried actually to come up with counter arguments as if this is nothing that has to do with that. But that was found in abundance. إننا قوم نشرب الدماء وأنه بلغنا أنه لا دم أطيب من دم اليهود دم يهود فجئنا لذلك. It's written loud and clear. And when you try to get an idea how human beings, flesh and blood, have managed to do what they did, and I don't want to delve into the atrocities themselves because I don't want you to suffer. Really, I would torture you if I would give you the nitty-gritty details of this carnage. I won't do that. But when somebody actually is being educated and inspired by those things, there is no reason why won't he actually do that kind of a sabotage. This is, by the way, this phrase was said by Khalid ibn al-Walid. Who is Khalid ibn al-Walid? Can you just elaborate on him? Just a minute. He's a great commander, yeah. So when he was fighting the Byzantines, yes, but when he was fighting in the Byzantines, this is exactly what he said about them. So what actually had been done here is to take his motto about the Byzantines and to implement that on the Jews. And this is the stuff actually those guys were being fed up with. Sheikh Abdullah Azzam, I guess you know him. If not, actually this is the mentor of Osama bin Laden in Al-Qaeda. Abdullah Azzam is a Palestinian of Palestinian origin. He is also one of the guys who did inspire Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Well, I don't want to say that, but history is written in blood. Since it's written exclusively in blood, the Hall of Fame is being exclusively out of skulls. He talks about skulls, mounds of bodies and body parts. this is exactly what happened in the 7th of October. Sorry for putting it that way, but it is there. This is Muhammad al-Daif. Muhammad al-Daif is one of the, architects of the Al-Qassam brigades. It seems that this guy actually passed away 2 weeks ago. We don't have a full confirmation about that, but this is he together with Rafi Salama, the commander of the brigade of Rafah. Those guys actually were seen together everywhere, and also that same day. And since the attack was very, very harsh, it seems safe to assume that Muhammad al-Daif, his name is Muhammad Dayar al-Masri. Al-Daif is kind of a term that was to depict the simple fact that this guy actually hasn't slept at the same place in a row for 2 days. He has to be guessed every other day or every day in order to make sure that he is not being caught up. But what he came up with that is that thing of, this is your day, ya Jama'ah. We are going actually to, kill them, slaughter them. We have to take Palestine back, and I won't actually waste your time with that. Justification of killing of civilians. This is another thing which is very, very important. Hamas is coming up with the notion that he basically deals with soldiers only, not civilians. But when you ask Hamas what is a civilian in Israel, civilian is a soldier either now or in the future or in the past, because everybody is being conscripted. So we do talk about civilians or soldiers in potentia when they are young. We are talking about soldiers when they are elders, because they were soldiers and they are still in the reserve. And of course the others. So the notion is that we don't deal with civilians, because there are no civilians in Israel. All of them are soldiers. This is something that was brought in from another great leader of Sunni Islam, which was heading the Fatawi Council and dealt with the way actually Islamic law should be interpreted in order to adjust itself to the time being. This is Al-Qaradawi, was Al-Qaradawi, and this is العمليات الاستشهادية التي تقوم بها فصائل المقاومة الفلسطينية لمقاومة الاحتلال الصهيوني، فهي لا تدخل في دائرة الإرهاب. You cannot turn our activities in Palestine under the roof of Irhab. Irhab means terrorism. Why? We are fighting and slaughtering soldiers, either now or soldiers in potentia. As I said before, all of them are soldiers. This is another publication by Hamas, Shura Council. It is called basically Al-Dirasat Li-Fatawi Wal-Rasail. This is something which is very, very important. I just show you that. Zionist society is an armed society. Mujtama' Musallah, which was established based on land theft, desecration of holy places, blood, and most of the youths, boys and girls, are conscripted. Okay? So try to imagine how this stuff is being digested day by day for 20 years in kind of a very, very well arranged educational system. This is another thing which deals with that. It is called fiqh al-jihad wal-aman. So the law of jihad. This is one thing that should be added to. What I try to tell you is that Hamas actually got kind of an inspiration 3 years ago. It was May 2021 when there was a war with Hamas that was named Guardian of the Wall. guardian of the wall actually was to bring into the Muqawama organizations the notion that if you would like to fight Israel, you should hit the center of gravity. Center of gravity is Al-Aqsa Mosque. You are familiar with the story of Al-Aqsa, yeah? You know why it is so sacred when it comes to Islam. This is the third sacred spot when it comes to Islam. The notion is that Prophet Muhammad was to do the Isra and Mi'raj, to climb up to the seven heavens, actually to get his revelation. And this is why Al-Aqsa is so instrumental here. If I am taking Palestine as a spot to be translated and interpreted religiously, Al-Aqsa would be the main thing. You know, Jews actually say in Hebrew, Na'alena et Yerushalayim al rosh simchatenu. Jerusalem is always on top of our joy and life. This is exactly, sarcastically put, what Hamas is doing. If I would have a fuss around Al-Aqsa, if I would make Muslims and Arabs do feel that Al-Aqsa is in danger, Al-Aqsa fi khatar, this is maybe the most populous hashtag I could come up with when it comes to that. This would create kind of a reality unheard of many, many fronts be united under the notion of let's rescue Al-Aqsa. Inqazu Al-Aqsa. We have to rescue Al-Aqsa. This is the multi-front platform that Israel was to get in 2021 and to a large extent on the 7th of October. So what happened for Israel is that from now on, Israel will have to deal with a multi-frontal arena. And we do talk about so many things. We'll deal with that on Thursday with your permission. But just to show you that, what is that? This is Hebrew, sorry for that. Temple Mount, center of gravity. Religiosity of the conflict, don't forget. These guys has managed actually to take what Haj Amin al-Husseini was to say on the 30s, 100 years ago. Al-Aqsa fi khatar. Al-Aqsa is under sort of threat. And this by itself has become, as I said before, the most populous hashtag by which to, ignite and call upon many, many young Muslims to do some active resistance. This is not a national conflict. This is religious one, as I said before, Islam versus Judaism, Jews versus Muslims. Of course, anti-Semitism here is to be found in abundance. Whether we are talking about classic anti-Semitism or modern anti-Semitism, this is definitely the stuff that you can find in the media, educational stuff that Hamas is coming. You know, Zionists are greedy. Zionists are the perpetrators of the 9/11 atrocities. You know, this is actually being said as kind of a solid fact with almost no kind of counter argument. People were taking that as kind of a truth. I myself actually was astonished when I lectured in, I think in Rome, in the headquarters of NATO. There were Arab officers there, and I lectured in front of them. And, in the Q&A, one of them actually, I think Jordanian, I don't remember quite well, just asked me, everybody knows who is the culprit behind the 9/11 atrocities. And I said, yes, everybody knows it is Al-Qaeda. No. Who created Al-Qaeda? That's the main question. One way or the other, it would come to the notion that Al-Qaeda was a Trojan horse that was created by the Zionist Christianity axis or something like that. Crusaders and Jews, this is the most accurate term. If you go to Afghanistan, you can find that Americans supported Al-Qaeda in order to better deal with the Soviets in Afghanistan. But these things are being dealt with in kind of a very manipulative way, as to just argue that Jews are everywhere in accordance with very, very, I would say, notions that are typical for the Elders of Zion protocols and stuff like that. Okay? Okay. This is Corona. This is what actually... 10 minutes? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just... Virus al-akhtar al-bashariyah. This is the most dangerous virus for human beings. But you can say actually what the idea behind it. The problem is, and this is once again, what we are trying to provide our policymakers, students, the public at large in Israel, Westerners or Europeans, is that you have to get an idea on the way these guys actually are thinking about reality. When Israel was to get out of Lebanon, it was 24 years ago. Israel has held sort of a security zone there from 1985 to 2015 years. The security zone was there in the south of Lebanon. Today it is inside Israel. The whole south actually is being cut off by Hezbollah and other proxies. But this is what this guy actually was to say. It is called the Beit al-Aknabut. Beit al-Aknabut is the cobweb theory of the Israeli society. What these guys, and it doesn't matter whether you accept that or not. It doesn't matter what you think about that. This is how they think. And when they get kind of an indication from reality, they read it in the way that would substantiate that, they would come to the fore. What is Israel in their mind? It is a very well advanced society when it comes to military technology, when it comes to everything. Israel is very, very well equipped militarily speaking. What does Hamas have? Does Hamas have a plane? An airplane? No. A tank, maybe? What do you think? Does Hamas have a tank? No. So here's the thing. How this thing can happen, that this resistance group manages to force the most able army or almighty army regarding, in Middle Eastern terms, to leave Gaza. Well, I can tell you that there are many arguments that could be taken that would say, at least at the time, that get out of Gaza, get out of Lebanon was something that actually Israeli society was really, really in the need of, because it is very, very pricey in terms of soldiers' life, in terms of everything. So that was, for that time, actually something that Israel thought would be very, very instrumental. And let me actually mention the sayings of the then Prime Minister Ehud Barak, 2000, after Israel actually evacuated Lebanon, and he was asked, what if? What if is a question which is very, very tricky in the Middle East. I can think of something which is very, very interesting about what if. When I was in London actually gleaning some stuff for my PhD study, I happened to meet kind of a telegram that was sent from, you know that, Charles, I guess, but don't tell them what the story is. It was sent from Foreign Office in London to Baghdad, February 1921. A month before Britain is going to announce the establishment of independent Iraq. And Sir Wilson, I forgot his first name, the sort of high commissioner that in Iraq was to get this telegram, Arnold Wilson. And I was to spend 4 days digging in and trying to find out what the answer from Baghdad, Arnold Wilson, was to become to the telegram of what if. What if the guy actually from the Foreign Office asked some what if questions? What are we going to do if Sunnis would go for Shiites, Arab for Kurds, or Assyrians, or whatever, Christians, when it comes to the religious stuff? And you know, I found it 4 days after. I almost let it go because it took a lot of time and energy and money. I was just a young student. And I found it, thanks God. It was very, very interesting, actually, what Arnold Wilson was to say to that clerk in the public or the Foreign Office in London. Thank you for the note, of course. Very British. How very observant of you. Still, very, very British. But in the end of the day, he said, rest assured, this won't happen here. What won't happen here? Sunnah and Shia, Arab and Kurds, and all that stuff. Why? We shall teach them. And this is a sort of a Shakespearean term. To let bygone be bygone. There's no need for Sunnah and Shia from now on. No need for Kurds and Arabs. All of us are going to be Iraqis. Well, the only pure Iraqis you can find nowadays is in my city. Actually used to be Ramat Gan in Israel and Or Yehuda. You have Iraqi Jews who still feel that this was their one-time homeland, and they very, very like the memories, you know, music and a lot of stuff which has to do with the Iraqi, you know, community. If you happen to come to Israel, Charles, I mean, we would invite you to Or Yehuda, where we have a museum of the Jews of Iraq, and this is very, very interesting to see how for so many years actually Jews have been living in Iraq. But to say the important thing here, Iraq was to become a failed state, an ongoing bloodshed, civil wars, and once again, this is something that make us understand. By the way, the Americans were of the opinion in 2003 that when they deposed Saddam Hussein, that they are going actually to have a different Iraq. Don't be that pretentious. This is what history tells us about the Middle East. Be very, very modest, very careful. Don't come up with, jump into conclusions. Many people actually feel that what I'm saying here, and even in Israel, is very controversial. But I hate the two words, mainly composed by Americans, which talk about the day after. I heard a lot about the day after in Iraq. I heard a lot about the day after in Afghanistan. I heard a lot about the day after in Libya and in Yemen. And, And, if that's how things look, then as a result of the day after, let us say, program, well, we shall deal with the day today. I mean, we'll deal with today and then we'll carefully and prudently go to the day after. And think that this is Beit al-Aqnabut. Israel is very strong here, out. But if you are going to put an X-ray into Israel's guts, you would see that. Cobweb. Meaning that they are Westerners. I mean, this is what they think. I don't think so, but I want you to just get their idea. Very, very people who tend to have complaints when things are, don't or go wrong in a way. Complaints against their society or other flanks in society, their government or whatever, since they are a bunch of immigrants which came from different countries and parts of the world, they tend to be very, very choosy, and if things actually are deteriorating, they would take their luggage and get back to the place where they came from. You say no, they say yes. And this is Beit al-Aqnabut. This is the cobweb. Israelis are very strong from the out. But when it comes to the guts, when it comes to the real stuff, they are very weak. What the real stuff is, this is what Hamas thinks and Hezbollah thinks he has and Israel hasn't got. Sabr, patience, and sumud. Sumud is steadfastness. I will stay on. Even if he is much stronger than me, the longer I go, the more steadfast I am, the better chances are that I will, in the end, and it is not to set a date. There is no now. This is a very Western world. Give me now what I want. Here, time is very, very amorphic. Oh, gosh, what is that? Okay. Israel تصارع نفسها. This is something that says that Israel is going, the cobweb is going to destroy itself from the in, not from the out. What we have to do is just to steadfast and be ready for that. Okay, I think I'll stop here, Charles, and I'll be more than happy to just start.
Thanks.
We'll take it from here now. Okay.
Thank you. I know we have a bunch of questions. I'm going to take the prerogative and start, and then open up for a conversation.
Okay.
So, thank you very much, as always, for your insights. And for your insights during a very particularly important and difficult, challenging time. So thank you. And I just want to say, I've been working with you for many, many years now. Thanks to Ahmadinejad, we got together and did some things. And thanks to Uzi, I'm a fellow at the Dayan Center, and Uzi's been coming here. So your insights, as always, we've been dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood and political Islam for a long time, and people didn't want to hear us, and people dismissed us as being right-wing and all kinds of crap. So we hear you, and it's refreshing, and it's important. It's not only important, it's vital. This is a vital, vital, vital lecture. So please, all of you here, please remember these words. It's vital. It's almost, however, tragically, it seems that you're coming from another universe. And I'll tell you why. This morning we were talking about the situation at Columbia University and on campuses, and how it's difficult to articulate what anti-Semitism is and what anti-Semitism isn't, and the intellectual discourse, and those who demonize Israel may not be anti-Semitic, but may be anti-Zionist and critical of Israeli policies, but not hateful. This is the discourse. Our professors in the classroom, the Saids, the Massads, the Khalidis, the Judith Butlers, demonize Israel and the Jewish people and democratic principles and women and gay people. And, you know, this is the reality we live in. The reality we live in, too, is that we in the West think with a great sense of ignorance and a great sense of arrogance, in that we think we don't need to study the other, particularly people in the region. We think that somehow they're primitive, and we know better. We're going to civilize them with the day after plan and this plan and that plan, but we don't need to study their language, we don't need to study their culture, we don't need to study their political philosophy, their strategic outlook, their tactics. No. We don't even have to engage them, because we're going to come up with a solution in Oxford or in Cambridge or in the Ivy Leagues or at the Sorbonne, and we'll impose it. But they speak our language. They know our institutions of governance. They know our higher education and our university system. They know our society, the demographic layouts, the cleavages. They've mastered our understanding, their understanding of our culture, of our language, of our politics, of our cleavages. In fact, Yosef Kawadawi, you mentioned one of his fatwas, Yosef Kawadawi, who preached his whole life, and I'll repeat it again, that the true believer, the true Muslim, is obligated to finish the work of Hitler. We are sitting in a college, in a university, in which Yosef Kawadawi established Islamic studies. Here, one of the most prominent, important Islamic studies departments in the Western world. These are the characters funding Columbia and funding the Ivy Leagues and funding American universities and French universities and Italian universities and British universities. So, this is, you know, the situation. So, and it permeates the Israeli Academy. So, Uzi, in this moment of crisis, I mean, the region is on the brink of it is a major war, and an escalating major war. Iran is making massive advances in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in the West Bank. The West seems to be on retreat, politically, intellectually. What, in this moment of crisis, given what you've laid out, and given the landscape of the intellectual moment, in the sort of postmodern moment when we're discussing how many bathrooms should be here, right?
Well, I mean, it's a very tough one because, I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. I am not a soothsayer. And we have many, many soothsayers in Israel for years. Each one of them was having a comprehensive program as to how to solve the conflict. This is very pretentious. We have to know first how much we don't know in the Middle East. I had a course on Afghanistan in our international school in Tel Aviv University. And in the end of the course, we were just taking sort of a lasting note from our participants, students. One of the students was a veteran from Afghanistan, American. And what he said, I wish I could have the opportunity in advance to have that kind of a course before being sent to Afghanistan. You know what Afghanistan is? Dozens of languages, of dialect, hundreds of clans. You have the Pashtuna, the Hazara, you have so many species. To even think that you can come from the out and you are so ignorant about thousands of years of history, and for some reason you would persuade people to accept your notions. This is, in my opinion, sort of infantility. This is how an infant actually would think. Sorry for putting that way. So this is our call for the Israeli society. What we are trying to do is to create kind of an army of young men and women who would like actually to be or to become experts in the Middle East, not experts that would tell you what would be the, because you know we are in a very, very related, I would say, kind of environment when it comes to the internal dynamics of things. But just to be very modest and prudent, and to have kind of an amount of knowledge by which to understand where you are, who you are. And never, I mean, what we have, I mean, when you said the other, we do actually preach for respecting the otherness of the other. Once again, actually, what we have done with the United Arab Emirates, and it's still there in Abu Dhabi, and you know that, Charles, is the Abrahamic city. And you can see that actually, as a church and a synagogue and a mosque side by side. This is because there are states in the Arab fold who do think that Israel is not their enemy, who do believe that the 21st century should be dealt in a different way, and do adhere to what we call actually cooperational system, which is also built on mutual understanding that culture is very important and cultural differences should be respected in order to establish sort of cooperation. So I'm not saying that about the Middle East. I'm talking about the bad guys. And the bad guys are here. And if somebody is going to ignore that, you're going to get that actually all elsewhere. Because, you know, if just to follow the precedents of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, West is next. Literally. And logically. So this is something that we have to bear in mind. Yes, please.
Thank you, Shakuzi. Really thank you. And you bring fond memories of the Dayan Center. Really, let me say this as an observation and then a question.
Just make sure everybody knows that you've been there and you were assisted by.
I did my dissertation there. You know, really, it's from an academic and intelligence perspective, it has been a failure all along. When I talk about our intelligence and your intelligence. And let me highlight a few things for you. In the 1980s, we missed the attack on the IDF headquarters in Tyre, the attack of the Marine barracks, the attacks of the American embassy twice, and still, as a matter of fact, we missed all these clues. For me, as a matter of fact, the transformation of the ideology of Hamas, especially the transition where to legitimize suicide bombing as martyrdom took place after Rabi expelled 415 Hamas leaders to Lebanon. And this is where, as a matter of fact, they got indoctrinated by Hezbollah. Let me go and further, as a matter of fact. In my intelligence council here in the United States, when I called to give my lecture, this is the same patterns that happened with the Houthi and with the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iran. So really, what I see myself, I see a constant failure of intelligence not to see what's going to happen next, especially when you have all the ingredients. That's what's happening today. Now, this is my question for you. You know, now soon I think we're gonna have a ceasefire. And this is what I think myself.
No, don't be that sure.
Well, all right, okay.
I hope though, but
sooner or later.
Explain what you're saying, so we can't hear you here.
Mainly, the question now that I'm saying is that for him, sooner or later you are going to have a ceasefire. What's his, you know, if you are gonna ask about Gaza, and given the Israeli, how they dealt with Hamas, and we as American, how we dealt, not only with Hamas, with the Taliban, and I can count you a lot of them because I know them very intimately. What's your really take? How would you say, how you tell, you know, how you advise? And my observation is that when you put al-Hadith on the Jew is hiding behind the tree, it's taken from Surah An-Nisa 155.
Sure. So what would you like me to take a bunch of questions and then?
Okay, Amy.
Yep.
Amy, and then.
I appreciate the emphasis on ideology. You spoke a little bit about the emphasis on the ground up to talk about youth. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit. I was wondering if you could elaborate some on how this is going to be carried out now, or how it's actually being carried out now here in the West.
Okay, good. Just write
You
down.
want to answer? You want to answer?
Give me just write it down, yeah.
You want to collect
Okay,
more?
yes, please. We'll take last
Okay.
one in this round,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're creating a task force, as I understand, in Israel to understand the Middle East and the surrounding countries, correct? What would your advice be for us to implement something similar to educate those students on campus that say river to the sea without understanding what they're saying?
Okay, so let's just thank you for questions, the queries. I think that each one of them is just more challenging than the other. Let's start with what you say about the. Let me just think
Take
of
the-
what
take the
you
mic.
suggested. So I'll stay.
Don't take it
No,
back.
you know what? I'll stay here. Let me just. Yeah, sorry. Let's.
You know they say when you walk, you think
Yeah,
better.
yeah, I think it's better. But, you know, you said that intelligence failed.
Yes.
In my opinion, you know, I'm not sure about that. Yes, there were many defects when it comes to that. But, you know, in Israel, the findings were there. There were many who actually said, ranks and file, I'm not talking about the higher echelon, that Hamas is coming up with something which is totally different than we know. And there was also an inquiry about one of the kibbutzim, Be'eri, just recently. And many faults there were, I mean tactically speaking. But here's the thing. On top of all that, I would say that decision makers in Israel were so far from what happened, they couldn't have even imagined that that kind of a scenario is feasible. You see what I mean? Because if you are strong, much stronger than him, your technology is the most advanced. He got nothing, and you are come up with the quantitative, so to speak, man. So you can definitely, you know, and this could be understandable. You could say, what should I be afraid of? What can he do? Oh, he knows that I am so strong. He won't dare doing. Dare is something that Israel actually was using since 2000 in Lebanon, 2005 and 2014. They won't dare do that. No, they would. And this is something that I don't know how to explain it to you now, because it has to do not with mere logic. It has to do with something that could be found in the twilight zone between West and East. And what I would actually try to do, what you suggested, is just to do that carefully. You know, people, I give you the example of Israel. I don't know who said that. Charles, you said that. I don't know. But, you know, my students in the university, Jews, most of them haven't got a clue about Arabic. Some of them would know French, German, Chinese, Japanese, I don't know. Arabic, why should I? You know, behind that you can find actually the stuff. He's my enemy. I despise him. I don't want to talk about him. I shouldn't learn anything about him. This is very Western, in my opinion. And I can't actually speak a lot about American, for example, or European history, but I've been to sabbaticals in the United States. My impression of the average American students was that, okay, America is the world. I know a lot about Jefferson, Hamilton, every stuff which relates to American democracy. You know, French Revolution and stuff, maybe Glorious Revolution. But when it comes to Asia and Africa, why should I bother myself about that? And this is, in my opinion, something that has to be dealt in a different way. The more you know about culture, especially when you are talking about your surroundings, the better, because you are becoming much stronger. And still, our laboratory is being named a wiser Israel. We are not talking about who is the righteous part. Everybody is righteous. I won't actually come up in kind of a debate and say, this was promised to Abraham. And Abraham is our father. And Muslim would say, our father too. We won't actually go to the blame game and not to this righteous thing. Wiser Israel is, are you familiar with the forest? If not, take a step back, inquiring into it. Make sure you understand actually the different colors. Make sure you have a differentiation between the brighter, let us say, paths and the more dark ones. And start actually dealing with the Middle East in kind of a very creative way. No wishful thinking. Peace on earth, new Middle East. This is very, very childish. I put it that way. Just remind me of your question. I'm sorry. How I am going to what?
Could you
Elaborate on?
this ideology and its presence in the West?
Well, I mean, you know, we have two. You see that? Actually, this is Beirut. This is Beirut. 2020. This is the port of Beirut. Any Lebanese here?
I was born there.
You're born.
I served at the
You know that this was actually the jewel of the crown in the Middle East 60 years ago. You know, if somebody was to tour the Middle East, to have fun, the music, business, skiing, Lebanon. The unbearable fact or easiness by which Lebanon was turned into an arena of an ongoing bloodshed and civil wars, this is something actually which is very scary. I mean, when you look at that, you know that a state should not be taken for granted. You can lose your state in a minute. And ask Lebanese actually in Montreal, in Toronto, in Europe, what they think about that. They would cry, actually, and they would really hope for, let us say, a replica of one-time Lebanon. But, you know, it is being taken captive by Trojan horses. It is not a state anymore. And, you know, you can say the same about Syria, about Iraq. In my opinion, and I apologize for that, all these creatures were built up by the West, in my opinion, in kind of a very twisted way. Because Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, even Jordan, were to be adjusted to Western hegemony in this region. So the West, while creating these states, was translating his own interest, imperial interest, in order to create new. And think of that. What is Lebanon? What is Iraq? You know, the British and the French tried actually to bring in primordial identities, pre-Islamic identities, Phoenicians in Lebanon, Assyrians in Iraq, whatever, to create kind of a secular mode of the new, let us say, political picture. But I would say that this is something that I can't, you know, say this could be the opposite.
Yeah.
This is the opposite. Yeah. And I can tell you that this is the Abraham Accord. Abraham Accord is kind of an agreement that would say we don't look for peace. We just to act as normalized people. That's all. Please normalize it. Those states do normalize Israel. And this is why they raise the ire of the bad guys, especially Iran.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to be very brutal. We're going to collect 4 questions and just very concise. Okay, Abdurrahim, then Shai, and then Charlotte, I'm sorry, then Naya, I'm sorry. So very quick, please, and then you'll respond as best as you can. We only have a few minutes left. Sorry.
You know, I have an interview at 6, so I have to stay in. So to stay in, but you have to go now.
All right.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for this interesting.
Speak louder, please.
Abdul Majid.
Abdul Rahim, Morocco.
Abdul Rahim. Are you Moroccan?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Where are you from? Where are you from?
From Agadir. Thank you very much for this interesting
Pleasure.
presentation. I'm really, I really know about the works of Moshe Dayan Center, especially the works of Rosman Wetzman about Berber movement in Morocco. Yeah. I will start from this point. Why we always talk about Arabic war, the conflict between Israelis and Arabs? I want to know if there is possibility to, because talking about Arab war, talking about Islamic war, it is that we give a free essence of existence of Hamas and other Islamic movements. If we can talk about, for example, about multiculturalism in our region.
Multicultural.
Yeah, multiculturalism, about not minorities, because there was not
I
minority.
agree with you.
Course, not minority. We're talking about, for example, about culture, Islamic culture, not Islamic war.
You know, I can take it. It's shortly.
Okay, sure.
Shortly, yeah. I agree with
30
you.
second response.
But this is a matter of a process of education. You know, I met Yusuf Al-Alawi. He was the Omani foreign minister when Israel had relations with Oman. And he said what we have to create in the Middle East is what he called Sharq Awsatiyya, which means Middle Easternism. Basically, if you can come to that, this would be great. But you know, for that we have to just...
I think that's why Israel was attacked on October the 7th, because we were getting there.
Yeah.
But,
you know, we have to work on that. That's a great idea, of course.
an optimistic, shy, very
The Hamas leadership is now rethinking October 7th. Was it worth it? Was it a success? Setback? Failure? What do you think?
You see, I mean, what's her name? Sorry? Shai, it's a very, very Western question. Sorry for putting that way. Because, you know, you and me are of the opinion that that was a grave mistake. Where is Yahya Sinwar? He is in the bunker. Gazans are suffering, but he couldn't care less. Okay, let's start with that. When you say success or failure, it depends how you are going to define that. And what we find in our laboratory, when we did the dictionary of success and failure, we found that what success is for us could be the opposite for the other, and vice versa. I think that Yahya Sinwar now thinks not in terms of, he thinks of terms of survival. If Israel is going to get out of Gaza, he would consider, I guess, returning or bring back the kidnappees, but the hostages, but with kind of a guarantee of Russia, China, Iran and others, that for 5 to 10 years Israel is not going to deal with Gaza, so he can recuperate. The other thing is that let them come. In any case, I am a new modern Salah ad-Din, because I managed to do to Israel something that nobody did. Now, I don't want you to accept it, but this is how I think. I don't think in my terms, but in his terms, and that's the problem here.
Okay, I'm going to collect two. Charlotte and Naya, very quickly.
Very quickly, as I say, I think that the comment about a lack of awareness is right. I haven't seen any sort of deep hangout in Area A. I get that that's almost impossible, but I do think there could be a use of those, like myself, Arabists who go and live in Area A. I've spent 2 years on and off in Area A. I could have predicted October 7th just by being in shisha lounges, by hanging out with
No, northern area of Gaza, sorry.
Oh, area West Bank. I can go to Gaza.
Ah, West Bank.
That was just one point. The other thing is, if the West Bank is in Israel, then how do we defend against the accusation of apartheid state? This is a different question. If Hamas says they want all of the West, Hamas says they want all, yet we're saying the West Bank and Gaza is in Israel, are we not saying the same thing?
If we say what, sorry?
If we're saying that the West Bank is at the beginning of the West Bank and Gaza, we're inside.
We're supposed to ask a concise question. This is going to be a whole.
This is precise. Are we saying the same thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
We're both saying we want all.
No, that's a very good question, but I'm just trying to get to the maths because this is it. Listen,
And how do we
okay.
defend against accusations?
I mean, can I leave it for Thursday?
Good.
I have a reason for that.
Good.
I have a reason for that because, you know, the West Bank, as you call it.
Yes, Mario.
No, the gentleman, no, never mind. This is basically the destination of Iran. Think of who stands in the East Bank. Who is the East Bank? Kingdom of Jordan. Iran is after this guy. Iran would like to topple the monarchy and create a continuum from the Persian Gulf, as they depicted, to the Mediterranean. They already have that through Lebanon. But if they're going to have Jordan with the West Bank actually under their feet, they are going to become very, very well entrenched in Israel. And we'll talk about it. You are right. So this is becoming something not of Israel alone, but of the would-be coalition that I hope Israel would be wise to be part of, and that should include many Arab states, including the Europeans and Americans, because we are dealing here with something that goes beyond the Middle East, believe me. And we have to stop them now, to nip them in the bud. Because if not, everybody's going to
I have
suffer.
to stop you now. Naya, quick.
Quickly, just for a question. Last year I was teaching the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I pulled up the Hamas charter online. And I have to tell you, they excised a lot of that language. And I'm just curious.
No, I mean, it was not a formal change.
So what was I seeing?
When you go for the judge, these days you will find only the original. Let's be in touch. I mean, you know, there are places where they sell it to people who pay.
To the West, they'll say one thing, of course.
But this is what I'm trying to tell you. It depends who you talk to. Western people, sorry for that. I mean, I am a Western Jew. Okay, let's put it that way because I don't want to. They are being taken as naive people. They are being taken as people who are ignorant, and you can sell them with kind of a smiley face, whatever they would like to hear. They're wishful thinking. I'm not saying that all Arabs are Muslims, sorry. But when it comes to Hamas, they are very, very shrewd. You know, the way they denied actually what happened on the 7th of October could show you that because they didn't expect to have that kind of a backlash. People talk about them as if they are Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And ask yourself, how come that Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz, Rishi Sunak, Macron, all of them were to come to Israel in a wartime? What is that? I tell you why. Because they knew you have to encourage Israel, but you have to provide Israel with a green light to nip those guys in the bud, because if not, as was the case with Al-Qaeda, it will come to 9/11 atrocities. As was the case with ISIS, it will come to the trains of London and Madrid. And you know, I don't want to delve too many details about the Muslim brothers, but the professional knows that they are well entrenched in the Western campuses, America, Europe. Beyond the campuses, they have many societies. A lot of money is going there. And, you know, the problem is that what you have to do is to be aware of that. This is where we have to make people come. You see? Let us make people be aware of the problem. In Israel, we have many people who have solutions, but they haven't got a clue what the problems are. So how come you come up with solutions? You know, this is something that, I find very important. Believe me, people talk about things that they are not familiar with. So I just wanted to just say, guys, what I try to actually to provide you with is food for thought. Really, food for thought. Try to take it prudently. Think of that. Be very, very patient and prudent when you have this things being, you are being informed with. And to my fellow Israelis, I say these days, something that goes back to Second World War. Churchill was going from London to Westminster, a working day, and he was asked, the story tells that he was on the tube actually going there, and the story tells that he was asked by one of the students where to be there, actually in front of him. She asked him, so Winston, would you be so kind as to provide something positive these days? This is what he was asked by her. It was the dark days in England, after the Blitz in Coventry and before the Blitz in London. And he said something which I think is very, very compatible, first, for Israel, second, for the Middle East and the world. Make sure you never let a good crisis to go waste. What Israel got here is a deep, unprecedented crisis. If Israel would learn from it and would come actually with some lessons to be implemented carefully and kind of a very, very well-legal and organized process, Israel would be benefited from that. It's very, very tough to say that after what we have gone through, but I do believe in that. So I hope for the good, and prepare for the worst. This is what Israel is saying. Thank you.
Thank you. So Uzi's back on Thursday. Great, important. Thank you. Tea time. Please come back here at 4:30 of 20 minutes.